Cool.
Okay.
Okay,
Hello,
we are
everyone.
on. Hello. Good
Welcome to
evening.
our Wednesday night chat about pranic healing, about prana and energy. So, hi, Lisa.
Hi, Sundar.
Okay, so this week we're talking about different levels of truth. And I think this topic also was inspired about Lisa having a small discussion with her friend, and then it evolved into something else. So, Lisa, do you want to share with us a little bit about how all this started?
Yes, actually, for many of us, including myself, I have many conversations with my friends, and at the point, sometimes the conversation get heated up, yeah, and we may end up in some tiff or argument. But if you look at it, right, um, how did this even happen? Have you ever thought that, we are actually talking about the same matter, the same topic, but, things got heated up because we are coming from a different angle, which I would face it as a different level of truth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that sense, the topic might look very simple, different level of truth, but it can be tricky when we try to apply that in our life. Yeah. So let's see how we could share this as simple as we can. Yeah. Like for example, if I were to hold this crystal stone, if you look at it, right, I would say that it is white. Some other people, look at it and they may say this is translucent, right? But it is still a crystal stone. It's the same matter, right? So yeah, it's the same thing that in all our conversation. So what your take on this, Sundar?
Yeah, I think that's a really good example actually that you just shared. And most, I think, if not all adult conversations usually revolve around who's right, right? Or who has a better perspective, or what is some people, the discussion maybe like you say might be emotionally heated, right? Because maybe they're looking at it from an emotional perspective, and some people look at it from a more intellectual perspective, where they're not thinking about who's right, but what's the best way forward, or especially like in business meetings and strategic meetings, it's not about pushing the blame or pointing fingers, but it's about how can we get this done. And basically that's what everyone's looking for. What are the facts? What is the truth, right? And then how do we proceed from here? But I think business aside, because that's work, and you're getting paid to produce results, it's important to not argue, right?
Right.
Yeah, but then when it comes to personal stuff, things that are not related to finances or work, or you don't have like a boss like chasing you for your KPIs. There's all these other abstract things in life. They're very exciting, right? Things that make life exciting, especially like sometimes even these discussions are both parties know that it's there is no point. That doesn't mean that it's not necessary to discuss. It's just that we just agree that you have your view, I have my view. Like if you're talking about abstract art, right? If you're talking about abstract art, both parties know there is no right or wrong here. You have your view, I have mine. We're just going to talk and explain what we feel or what we think, right? And that's because of a different perspective, and everybody has their own truth, right? And this depends on your experience in life and what you think about it, and so then there are certain other topics where the truth may not always be the best option, especially if you're especially if you're in a relationship.
It is. Yeah, I agree to that. If you look at from basic psychology side of it, right? The reality is not what we don't really experience the reality as it is, or the world as it is. Yeah, we only experience the world as our mind shape it, right? Everything we experience, the mind actually mold it, fit it, filter it into a shape that the mind wants it. So we're actually looking at this. We might not be looking at things as it is, isn't it? Right.
Yeah,
For example, if I were to say this is white, you can say this is translucent, but we are coming
exactly.
from the same, it is the same matter. So yeah, I think that is something that is debatable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sorry, Sundar, you go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's very true.
Sorry for cutting in.
And this also depends. So partially, I think when we talk about the levels of truth, we also do to some extent. It's definitely related to the clarity of mind, and to a large extent, I think we also know within a group of people who has more clarity or more wisdom on a certain subject. Sometimes you resonate more with certain people, or you go like, this is a very smart man, or this person is very experienced, and then you go, okay, this person has a lot of clarity in this topic. Let's listen to them. So sometimes these people, they're called gurus or professors or scientists or saints, different names, but for different industries, right? Sometimes they're called master, like we call Master Chokoksui master, because he's a master of healing. And, so sometimes when we're looking for truth and you really want to know about something, then also we kind of see on the clarity. So like, you're saying about this crystal, right? And some people may call it white. Some people may call it translucent. Like, for some people, they're just like, we just need a word to reference the object. Okay, like white will do. White will do. That's a, they're not wrong, right? They're not wrong. Because the light coming out, it's not a colored light. If you look at an object, especially this crystal, it's not colored light. It's a white light. White light is coming from here, so it's white. Okay. Yeah. But for some people, they might say, "Oh, but you can see through the object, so it must be translucent." So different people trying to describe different things. And,
maybe it's also to limitation of their knowledge of the vocabulary sometimes. If let's say, the person doesn't know what is a translucent, so his mind will just say it's white. But what he meant is translucent, but it doesn't have that vocabulary or that knowledge to actually explain it in a more detail, right? So,
exactly. You're right. Yeah.
Right.
And most of the time, actually, even vocabulary is not really all that important. A lot of people can get the message across effectively, and some people, even with perfect language skills, perfect communication skills, still cannot get the message across. This reminds me of a story. Master Cha, when he was writing the book, The Art and Science of Pranic Healing, now it's called Miracles Through Pranic Healing, the first Pranic Healing book.
Right.
It took him 3 years to write this book. And, he kind of secluded himself isolated himself inside a church. The church in the Philippines were very kind to offer him the space. And he used to write and write and write. And this book was a lot of effort, So after he wrote the book, like the first draft, the second draft, what he would do is he would ask someone to read the text and say, what did you understand from this? Right. Because for him, it was very clear, but it would not be useful if the reader could not understand it, right?
That's very true.
For him, the truth was very clear. But what is the point of using bombastic language when the person reading cannot understand, right? So in some cases, the proper word is really important to describe the situation. Like let's say, now we're talking whether it's white or translucent. But, we're talking about a crystal, right? That word still has to be correct. We still have to say the word crystal, because otherwise you don't know what you're referring to anymore. If you start saying like, oh, the rock, then you're like, oh, it could be anything. So some words have to be accurate, but not all words will be necessary to define the truth. You just need to get the message across. So what Master Cha used to do is he used to write it, and then when people repeat it back to him, he'd be like, "That's not what I said," So he would be like, "Okay," he would rewrite the text in a simpler form, and until I think even one time he asked the boy who used to make his tea, used to serve him tea. He used to ask this boy, why don't you read this? So someone with a very basic education, he would ask this person to read this and say, okay, what did you understand? And then, and if the tea boy could understand this, what is your excuse? The average person, with a basic education or a little bit higher education should have no problem in understanding the text. So that was Master Cha's approach, because and if you read his books, right? I've heard this from so many people already, and my own experience too, that when you read the books, they are so simple. Anybody with an average education or just basic education, as long as you understand English, you can really understand what he's trying to tell you.
Yes, but that's very true.
There's no bombastic stuff in there,
Yes.
And what's really amazing is that if you really take the time to digest what he said, you realize that the meaning is so deep. Like, for example, this book that I read, maybe about 3 years ago, at that time, I had a very superficial, now I think it's a superficial understanding, because I was like, oh, okay, we're just talking about healing, how to remove energy, how to, channel clean energy into the body. Oh, very interesting. Okay, we learned this in the class, right? So, okay, and then recently, actually this last few weeks, I've been reading the book again, and I've almost finished it, the book from cover to cover. And I thought, like, oh my God, it's been a while since I came back to this book. And there are some things here. The language did not change. The book did not change. But somehow I was like, some of these things are taught in the higher crosses of pranic healing. Mm-hmm. And I was like, wow, how Master made it so simple. And he the language is so simple. But if you had a higher understanding or more clarity in your thought, you will be able to look at a topic and still see a deeper level. I wouldn't say like a higher level. I would say like a deeper level of truth, because your experience adds into the understanding now, right?
Yes, that's very true. Because, for example, if we were to read a philosophy word, right? So the understanding of the philosophy word will depend on the level where you are. Sometimes it is as simple as it is, but when you go a little bit more, if your knowledge is more in depth, then when you look back at that phrase has more meaning to what it is, So yeah, it is basically the same. The deeper we move, the more knowledge we have. When we come back and read the phrase actually gives a little bit more in-depth meaning to it. Yeah, but it has always been there. I mean, the phrase has not changed. Everything is still the same, right? Yeah. It is actually our thoughts, our knowledge.
Changed.
Yeah, the person has changed. The person has matured.
The person has changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's really good, right? When you see that in yourself, to have a little bit of awareness and to see that, like, even especially like, Liza, you have kids, right? Especially when your kids, start to develop, and then they say, "Oh, mommy, this makes more sense to me now," and you go, "Oh, finally, you've grown up."
Exactly. So this is what we justify, right? We know based on our knowledge. So if the knowledge coheres with whatever makes sense together, so that the word has deeper meaning to it, Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah.
This is Monica said that she agrees to it. Yeah, it is quite difficult to explain. Actually, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so Monica is with us on Zoom, and Monica just shared that it's quite difficult to explain the deeper level of truth. You actually have to live it, you have to experience it to know it, right? And once you have that experience, then you appreciate people who've been through more than you and are sharing their wisdom.
Right. Last time I used to have this conversation, and each time I say, why can't I just, when I explain something, the other person would take it in the wrong way. It's not what I meant it was, how it is. So the more now that I learned, the more that the knowledge that I have, then I'm able to actually break down, to what I mean, what I wanted to say into a better context. Yeah, I'm able to articulate it better. So that would also help, yeah, to not have that friction there. Because from one point of view, if we are looking at one matter, we have only our own view, right? Yeah. So the other person is looking at the same, but from a different angle.
Yeah.
So how do we actually come in a midway, you know, in the balance where, you know, what I'm saying, you understand where I'm coming from, and what he's saying, I understand where he's coming from. It's the same. So there is a different level of truth, right? Doesn't mean that either one is wrong or right. We can be right at a different level. I can be right at a different level, right? So this is how I think we have to look at matters in a way.
And there's an interesting concept just now you were sharing with me as well, Liza. Earlier you were saying that, you know, especially in conversation, there is relative truth and there's also absolute truth. You want to share a little bit more with everyone else on this? Because I found that really interesting.
Okay, so relative truth is something that we perceive, right? So it's something that our mind is molded to believe. The beliefs that we have, maybe it comes from our belief system, our knowledge. It can be from biases. You know, we are biased about certain things. Maybe we like certain things more. So all this theory, right, on the truth of relatives is just based on our own assumption, based on whatever we know, our knowledge, our belief system. So absolute truth would be something that is a truth as it is. It is without any distortion from our interpretation. It is as it is, you know. So that is one that is very difficult to achieve. Yeah, the absolute truth, because
and it will hold true on all levels, right?
Yes,
whether it's you know, irregardless of culture, of timeline, of you know, location, or you know, different perspectives. Absolute truth will hold true under any, no matter how you bend and twist it. It will always be no matter which angle you come in, it will always be true, right?
Correct. And that is the one that is, I think, most difficult to achieve in our life, to look at. So.
because life is dynamic, right? Life is not static. It's not like you say. I think one of the very rare things that are static is mathematics. Only mathematics remain static for a long time. 1 + 1 will always be 2, right? It will always be 2. You know, it's only, and like, you know, for the, you know, the circle, like, you know, if you're going a little bit bigger, if you're thinking of a diameter of a circle, and you know, the number pi will always be pi, right?
Correct.
So, you know, I think for those ones, it's very rare to have static truth, where things never change, and mathematics does that really well. So a lot of people say it's the language of the universe, right? It doesn't require, you know, you can write this in symbols. You can write however you want. 1 + 1 is 2. It doesn't matter, regardless of language or location or timeline. You know, it's always going to be,
the same.
So I think
the answer is always the same.
So that, and I found this, like, okay, for those small, not say small, but, you know, for those simpler things, it's easier to get to the absolute truth. However, you know, the excitement and the joy in life, you know, things like art, you know, there is no absolute truth to art, to painting. You know, so these things, it's always going to be a relative truth based on the person's perspective, what they've been through in life, right?
Correct.
And I think, you know, I was also thinking about a very good example of how we can understand certain abstract topics. One of those topics, which I think might be applicable to everybody across the board, is the subject on God, about God, right? So, you know, this is not a religious thing. I'm not here to preach to you. Okay. This is more of a personal burn, like, you know, a personal experience that I was wrong about, or I didn't fully understand. And then I came to a better and deeper understanding about the topic and about God. So I think, when we're trying to explain God to a child, most people start off with the same thing, because a child, let's say a toddler below the age of 7, it doesn't even have the vocabulary in the first place. Like we already talked about it. They don't even have the vocabulary. So how do you even explain this in the first place? So you have to use very simple words, very simple concepts. And we just say, there is a very old man, right? So usually when the first time you've been introduced, you always say old, because because we, at that age, the older you are, the smarter you are. But once you become an adult, once you become adult, not true anymore. But at a very young age, I would say below 20, it is most likely true. The older you are, the wiser you are, right? But after 20, not so true. Okay. So firstly, that's how we start, right? That's how we start understanding about God. We say, oh, this is an old man. It's the same way that let's say if you go to work, if we go to work, and then you had a child and you had to explain to your child that you work for somebody, and you would just call this person boss, right? And that boss has someone above him, and you say that's big boss. Okay. Right. And there's one above that, and bigger boss, right? See, because the child doesn't understand, so you just say boss, bigger boss, right? Okay. Or something to this effect. Because you cannot explain to him that, you cannot explain to the child that, there is a supervisor, there is a manager, a general manager, a chief of operations, an executive chief.
Too complicated for
he's like, boy. What do they even do?
I don't even understand what you are talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. How would you explain this, right? So, and to be honest, even some people, young adults who are working, even they don't understand what is, in a multi-level MNC organization, multi-level corporation, what does a regional head do? What does an operations manager do? What's a general manager? Most people don't even know the job description for these roles, right? They just know I have a boss and this is my target for the month. Okay. So very similarly, but in work, if you want to rise up the ranks, what you would have to do is you would have to study the next position. And this is true if you're trying to get a promotion, okay, at work. Okay, so this is what you do. You study the position that you are looking at or looking to get promoted into, and you start taking on the responsibility of that position, right? Right. So let's say you're a sales staff, you want to be a team leader. You start behaving like a team leader, not to take over your current boss, but to start taking over some responsibility so that eventually you can learn the role and start your own team. And then once you're a team leader, you think, maybe I need to manage a few teams. I need to be a manager, right? So you start helping out all the other teams, already behaving like a manager, and then you get promoted, and then the job becomes a bit more understood, right? So in the same way, because we're always looking to progress financially or physically, we're learning about the higher level, the next level, and the next level, and the next level. Somehow, when it comes to the topic of God, about spirituality, we get stunted, or the emphasis is not really there on the old man who's very wise. and then there's this common thing, right? Where is the old man? Oh, up in the sky.
That's what my daddy told me. It was in the sky.
Right. Yeah, everybody starts to think that there is this guy with a white beard in on the moon looking down at you or something like that.
It's a perception, right? When you talk to the kids, when you tell them, oh, certain things is like this, so that goes into their belief system.
Yeah.
Right. It goes into that is what is going to mold how they think of certain things. So right now, they believe it for the rest of the 10 years, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so relatively, that's not entirely wrong, actually. It's not entirely wrong. The concept is correct, but the details are all a bit off now. Because as you get older, okay, come on, some things don't make sense. There is no man on the moon. Okay, there is no guy in the sky. There's no oxygen up there. He'll probably be dead. Okay, so some things just don't make sense anymore. So you have to upgrade your understanding that it's not a man, but there is something beyond the body, which is an energy body, and something that controls the body, which is the soul. So what happens when the soul, at the end of the one lifespan, and the soul leaves the body? What happens then? That means
Right.
there must be a place that the soul returns to. Now, most people have to wait until they die to know where this place is, right? But
I
in some
used to have this
meditations,
question. Yeah.
yeah, but in some meditations, especially in the meditation of Twin Hearts, sometimes at a certain interval, if you do this often enough, you start to have a moment of very deep, deep stillness, very deep peace. And suddenly your consciousness expands to a level that you cannot experience, you cannot imagine. It just happens instantaneously, right?
Right.
And then you have this out of world experience. Some people call it, they saw a light, or some people say they saw an explosion of light. Some people, they say, oh, I saw the earth, I saw this, I saw that, and they knew it was not of this material existence, right? So that level of expansion of consciousness, again, we have to see which level did you expand to. Very rarely do you go all the way to the big guy. Yeah, very rarely do you go all the way up to the big guy on top, which is the one we call God, right? The Supreme God. Usually, you just go outside of your body. So some people may even have this experience where they saw themselves as a third person, right? So they're meditating, they see themselves as a third person, they go, oh my God, that was wild, right? And then, some people who take certain, this is not encouraged, by the way, but, some people who take certain substances, they also tend to have this experience, but it's not encouraged because sometimes when this is chemically induced, the body gets damaged in a certain way, and the soul finds it hard to come back. Or even if the soul comes back, sometimes other things come back with you, things that you never intended. So, so because the body is damaged in a certain way, it's like you got an infection. Like on a physical level, if you got an infection, you got a cut, and then bacteria came in, and you only wanted the blood to seal the wound, but other things came in, right? Similarly, energetically, when you take certain substances, the body gets damaged in a certain way. Other things come in, and they weren't invited, right? So not encouraged, but some people have this experience, so maybe you can relate. So when we upgrade our experience and we start to understand that God is not this old man in the sky, we're talking about something. We're talking about a consciousness, right? A certain higher level of intelligence that may be higher than us. We don't know, right? Some people can be very highly evolved themselves. So, that's what we're talking about. So, when you get a bit higher, you notice that there are higher spiritual teachers, higher beings, and they're not the ultimate as well, right? They're just spiritual teachers, right? Or prophets, or messiahs, or the child of God, whatever you want to call them. They just, they're slightly more evolved, and sometimes they visit Earth. Okay, but most of the time they don't. Okay, so but they're there.
There are many people who are fortunate to have these encounters. Yeah.
Yeah, very true. Yes.
Yeah. That's what they call miracle encounters.
Yeah. So then you start to realize, oh, there are greater beings. There are greater beings that just don't have a physical form. Now, do you really call this greater being a god? Some people do. So, like, in the religion of Hinduism, right? Hinduism has this polyculture, right? Where there are many, many, many gods. So there is always the one supreme god, which is the Parabrahman. Okay, and then from him comes, the Trinity, right? Which is Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma. Which is the same in Christianity. You have God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, right? So there's the Supreme God, then it comes down to the Trinity, and then it comes down to many, many deities. And then from those deities, you have also very highly evolved beings, sometimes called spiritual teachers. And then from spiritual teachers, they help people like us, help to grow and make us into more evolved beings. So if you start to think about the chain of the hierarchy, you start to realize God is not this old man in the sky. It's very, very high up, actually. It's but he's not unreachable, right? He's not, if you just, it's like talking to the CEO in the company. Anytime you want, you can send an email, the CEO will get it, right?
Right.
But doesn't necessarily mean that the CEO will come to you personally and sort out your problem. He may send the appropriate person to help you out, right? So in the same way, God might not come and stand in front of you. You just ask him, "Hey, God, where are you?" He might not come stand in front of you, but he might send the appropriate person to come and help you, to understand this concept. So that's the thing. Like when we have a certain understanding about spirituality, or about maybe even if you're not a spiritual person, if you start to think about the source of energy, that's a good place. So that's something we talk about in pranic healing. One of the most amazing techniques that's made very, very simple in pranic healing is called scanning, right? So Master Cha teaches us the ability to sense energy with our hands. This is called scanning, right? And in the class, they go more deeper into it. So when you're able to scan for energy, when you're able to feel these things, then you start getting familiar. So what Master Cha encourages is, you start getting familiar with the quality of energy of simple things, daily things around you. So you feel like food, for example, and then you feel like, the quality of the energy in the air, the energy of a human body, right? The aura of a human body. What does that feel like? What does stress feel like? What does, so you, in some of the more advanced courses, level 2, level 3 pranic healing, you learn about, certain ailments. What does fear feel like? What does,
the
self-doubt feel
the
like?
energy, right?
Exactly. So once you have this certain understanding about energy, right, then, you can also start to scan for certain things like divine energy. Let's say if you're skeptical, like me, when I came into pranic healing, very skeptical. I did not believe in God or higher beings. So then, I remember the instructor was saying that, okay, you know what? Now that you know how to scan for the energy of a person, we're all going to say a prayer, and then we're going to scan the energy again. And you tell me what happened. So, me being very, very skeptical, I was like, oh, man, I can't believe we're doing this, So, but I tried to keep an open mind before I make judgment, right? So I said, okay, the class has been great. Let me just try and scan, because I in the class I could feel some sensation already. And then so I remember we scanned my partner, and then we felt the partner's energy. And then after that, they said a prayer, and then she said scan again. And I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like the energy transformed. It became really soft, really subtle, but still firm. And it was double its normal size. So the human body has an aura. The aura was double the normal size. I was like, wow, this is insane. It took like less than 5 seconds to say a prayer, and the energy had doubled.
Right? Yes.
Right? Yeah. So this could not stop in my mind. I was like, no. I was like, no, it must be a problem with me. I was imagining it. I was like, but every other student in the class had the same result. Some even got bigger, who were more sensitive with their scanning. So because I had some internal resistance, because I was very skeptical, I wasn't very sensitive. But yet I could feel it, right? Some people who were super, super sensitive, they had wildly different experiences, And I was like, I think they're exaggerating. I think they're exaggerating. It took me so many years until now, only now, I'm starting to realize the beauty of this. And I was like, wow, that's crazy. That once you start understanding that there is a higher being first, okay? If you already are devoted and introduced to this topic as a child, introduced to religion, to the concept of God, then very good for you, okay? Because it makes things a lot easier. If you weren't, and you were not told about these things, someone may have told you about this white beard man in the sky, right? If you just think about that for a second, right? Not about the old man in the sky, but just think about your existence, right? Your physical body. It's just, where does it come from? Every day, like last week we were discussing, every day your cells die and they renew, right? So what are they renewing with? They renew with physical material that you're consuming, the food. right? That's how cells recreate. They need some sort of fuel as a building block, as a building material to make new cells, right? So when you start to understand this, you understand that most of your body, if not all of your body, is basically the raw materials from the earth that's just been put into the shape, right? And every day, you're renewing yourself. The cells are dying, the cells are rebuilding. Every day, you're just a mold of clay, basically. You're just a mold of clay, right? A combination of earth, sun, and air that's been combined into a plant, transformed into animal matter, and then transformed into human matter, right? So let's go beyond that. If everything is from earth, where does the earth come from? Right? The earth is also, a ball of gas and dust. and some people say it's the Big Bang, the sun, the original star imploded, and then the planets, exploded and circulated around the central orbit, right? So, okay, then where does the sun come from? And if you go bigger and bigger and bigger into astronomy, you start to realize that, our being is really, really small. There is higher, greater forces than us, right? Firstly, the first bigger force than us is the earth. Without the earth, we're nothing, right? And then if you think about the earth, there's something way, way like 100 million times bigger than the earth is the sun. Well, I'm not sure about the scale, but the sun's a lot bigger.
Yeah.
So, and then if you think about the sun, even the sun is really tiny, right? If you compare it to the size of the solar system, okay? And if you compare the solar system to the size of the galaxy, it's just like a drop of sand in the ocean. Okay, and if you compare the galaxy to the universe, that's again another drop of sand in the ocean. You realize how tiny we are. So if you just, even if you don't believe in God, if you start to believe in the hierarchy of energy of where your physical body actually originates from, you're just a mold of clay from what? From gas and dust floating in the universe, right? So if you believe in that, if you can relate to that, then it's the same way that religious people or devoted people, they ask God, please help me, please bless me with the inner strength, with beauty, with love. You ask for all this. It's the same way you can also connect to the energy of the earth, to the sun, to the galaxy, and say, to the source of energy in the universe. If you don't want to use the word God, you can say, to the source of energy in the universe. Can you please, send some of your stardust and some of your blessings into my life? Because what is money? Money is just stardust, right? Yeah. So
that is
if
so
you start
interesting. Yes.
Yeah. So you ask for these things, or maybe let's say you're looking for a relationship. You say, okay, I am a piece of stardust. Help me find another piece of stardust.
And a pretty one.
Yeah. So
there is a sharing
way,
here, Sundar. There's an interesting sharing here in the chat. After I'll like to read about it. Yeah.
So if we start thinking about where we come from, the hierarchy, so this is no longer about work. Remember, just now we're thinking about how to advance in your career. Similarly, if you're thinking how to advance spiritually, advance your soul, you just start just very rationally thinking about where you come from. You start finding God really, really quickly.
Well, this is where I'm looking at the whole concept of this. You see, the truth that we find is physical, and that it goes beyond physical, right? When in spiritual, you actually find matters are beyond just physical itself. Yeah. So the truth where this comes in, it is quite relative. Yeah, it depends on your knowledge and how much you want to learn about it. And regardless whether we learn about it, the truth is still out there. It is there. It is as it is, right? So like the solar system and all the universe and all, it is as it is. So whether we believe in that, it still is there. Right or not? So this is where I feel that there is so many if you look at the whole picture of it, there is so many levels of truth that you can actually, from one level to another, you can actually discover it to whichever level that you want to get in. And spirituality is so vast. It is so, it's not like And metaphysics is like, my God, but when I came into spirituality, when we were studying about the solar system, I tell you, that was the first study that I studied, and my mind was, I was like, wow, we are just so small, and we are so worried about ourselves. We are just thinking about ourselves. It's so much inwards, but there is so many things out there. There is so many truth out there that you can actually explore and find. Yeah. So yeah, that is a chat here that I find very interesting. Chat by Monica. He says, like Hanuman said, when I identify myself with the body, I am your servant. But when I identify myself with the soul, we are one. But spiritually, we are one. Yeah. So this is exactly, yeah. He said that I experienced this understanding in a glimpse. I think this is also one of the example of level of truth. Yes, it is actually. One of the level of truth is your own experience, especially when you do the twin heart meditation. You will have a lot of different experiences, and that truth is only catered to you, is your own experiences, right? So yeah, I feel that there is so many things that we do not know. The more you learn, the more I find
the more you realize you don't know.
I realize I don't know. The more books that I study, the more books that I have to study.
Yeah. Yes. Very, very correct. Very correct.
Yeah,
I
and
like
the
this
list
statement.
is never end. Yeah, the list is ongoing. It's like from one book I came to five books. Then from 5 books I came to 10, and now the list is like, oh my God, I got so many things to read. Yeah, but that is how it is. So whether we believe in the truth, it still exists regardless. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what we perceive doesn't mean that it is just in the box itself. But if you open up the box, then you see, oh, there is so many more things out there, to discover.
Yeah.
So that is what I love about spirituality. It is not, it's not just like, in a box. Not so. There is so many things that you can explore, discover, and that is your experience individually. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly.
Cool.
It's a really interesting topic. I think even one lifetime may not be enough, because every time we experience something, we have to go back and learn again and then experience again. And I guess this is why there's a continuous process.
Right. Correct. So sometimes when you read, you say, I have this experience when sometimes, like you said just now, when you come back to it after a few years or maybe after a few months, where you have gone through quite a bit of understanding or quite a bit of study, then when you come back to a matter or a word or a book, right, the understanding gets deeper. I didn't understand about the solar system when the first time when we studied about it. There was certain I couldn't grasp the abstract idea about it, right? But right now, if I go back, because that was 2 years ago, right? About a year plus ago. But right now, if I go back, I don't know. It just clicked. When I listen to it or when I read about it, it just clicked. The information just makes sense to me right now.
Because you've gotten wiser.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, this is where we know that we progress. We every one of us in spirituality would like to explore a lot. Yeah, to study. Whether we find the truth, we do not know, but those information, those knowledge, I find it very helpful. That's very helpful. Yeah. When I look at my life right now, all the knowledge that we have, actually it helps me to get on with life in a more positive way. Yeah.
Yes.
With all the knowledge, last time we were just worried about our emotions, or how do we handle emotions. That is a very, very small part of it. But when we go in that, spirituality is so much more, so much vast. Yeah. Right?
Yeah. And I think for everybody watching and listening as well, everybody would feel the same way. They would resonate with what you say, that
Right.
every day you start to discover something more, and you realize that, oh my God, how juvenile, or how, oblivious I was, or ignorant I was, and, say like, oh my God, I've gotten a better understanding now. And that's really the goal of evolution, right? Self-help, self-evolution, right? Soul evolution. So, okay, so thank you all so much. And that's the session for today. If you want to know more, or if there's a topic that you really want to have some insight about from Liza and myself, just leave a comment, and then we'll address this every week, right? So it was very nice having all of you with us, and thank you, Monica, also for joining us over Zoom.
Yeah, Monica shared something in the chat. She says that she read Master Chua's book again and again. Every time she learns something new. Yeah, same with me, Monica. I think we progress when we know that we do not know more and more. Correct. That is very true. The more that we know, we find that we do not know a lot of things. Yeah. So that's how we progress. So we continue to learn and learn and learn. Yeah, for every one of us, and learn and practice. Yeah. So okay. We are good for this week, and we see you next week. Thank you so much.
Okay.
And
thank you, everyone.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Bye-bye.